listening to Unpause Your Life with Dr. Cali Estes and Master Coach Jenny Fontana, founders of the Life Coach Method. Each one of our uplifting and deep dive episodes is geared to help you tackle the things that hold you back from having the most magnificent life you deserve. Sit back, relax, and prepare to be coached.
Hey everybody, this is Dr. Cali Estes with another wonderful episode of Unpause Your Life. And I am so excited for our guest today. I've been waiting for him to come on for about a month and a half now. And I want you to meet Dave Mowry. He is a comic telling his story of living with severe mental illness, one joke at a time. He also teaches stand-up comedy to folks with a mental illness, helping them find humor in their dark days and lost years, transforming their lives. His best-selling book is called OMG, That's Me, and it's in the mental health book section. It's sold over 17,000 copies, which is pretty awesome. He's a comic who shatters stigma one joke at a time. He's overcome hospitalization and homelessness and shares his story of resilience to help others know they are not alone and that healing is possible. Welcome, Dave.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Now, I'm really excited you're here, and you have no idea why, so I'm going to tell you. Most of my listeners know my bucket list was to do stand-up on Sunset Strip in LA, and I got to do it in 2017 with the group that does mental health with Carrie Fisher's nonprofit. So I'm really excited to have you because I got to do stand-up and see what really goes into it, and you're either loved or hated, and it's fast. So welcome aboard, and tell me about what's like for you doing comedy and pairing it with mental health.
It's, I tell my story one joke at a time, so it's important to know that it's not, I don't tell jokes. It's not about other people. It's about my experiences. So it's once people figure that out, it's very well received. But I've lived with bipolar disorder, severe anxiety, all my life. And then I found stand-up comedy, and I had a knack for it. And so getting up on stage and telling the story, it's cathartic, and people relate. It's amazing what happens. People say, "Oh, OMG, that's me. You're telling my story," and they love the jokes. They love relating to it. And hey, it's interesting. I get asked to speak to groups and organizations, and I'll get nervous and things like that. But when I get on stage as a comic, all that goes away, and totally relaxed. And I see the same thing happen with other people that I've taught in my classes.
That's interesting you said that because I do addiction and mental health with executives and celebrities. And
Yes.
Every musician that I have worked with, and I've worked with some of the biggest rock and roll names out there, says the exact same thing. They have crippling anxiety. They get on stage and it's like there's nobody in the room. It's just them. How does that happen for you? Because I don't have that frame of reference. So tell me what that's like in daily life. And then how does your brain make that switch on stage?
Yeah, it's I don't know how particularly that it happens. I think just the fact that I'm up there and being completely honest about who I am and what I am. I think that's the key for me. I've spent so much time. I had my 14 lost years and dark days when I was really ill, and I did so much of that. I pretended to be okay, and it was so hard. It was exhausting just to pretend like I was okay. And then learning the comedy, I was able to relax a little bit, and I learned other things, other keys. People I work with, I help them when they're interacting with other people. We with the mental illness, sometimes it consumes our life, and that's everything that's going on in our head. And we'll talk to people, and we'll bring up mental illness or what we're going through, and they can't wait to get away from us. So with the anxiety, that was kind of how it was for me. I'd hide in the shadows. I'd try to blend into the wall because I know if people would look at my eyes, they'd see that I was pretending and that I wasn't okay. But with the comedy, everything changed. When I learned stand-up comedy and looked for the humor in my experiences, everything changed. So now I'm looking for, I'll see something, I'll hear something, and I'll say, where can I find the humor in that? And it takes the anxiety away, it takes the stress away, it takes the, I'd have PTSD attacks. I'd hear a song on the radio, it would remind me of something somewhere, and I'd go into a panic attack, anxiety attack. And when I took the stand-up comedy and started doing and teaching the classes, I'd hear that song, and start to get that, go to that dark place, and I'd say, okay, where can I find the humor in that? And it changed everything. The PTSD is almost completely gone. Um, it was just looking for the humor, and my experiences changed everything.
It's so interesting you say that because I teach a lot of my clients that you can't be anxious and happy at the same time. Your brain can't chemically make that happen. So if you have anxiety and you're flipping it to humor, which is fun, funny, laughter, which they say is always the best medicine, you can't be anxious. Your brain will not allow you to do both at the same time. So how do you get yourself ready to do stand up? What is there a routine you do? Is there something you go through mentally or physically to prepare for that?
There's I check in with myself to, see how I'm doing. And if I'm kind of feeling down and low energy, I get myself to speak louder and to almost yell on stage, and that helps. Otherwise, I look forward to it. So it truly is interesting. There just isn't stress. I can feel stress. What I stress about, what I'm anxious about is, okay, we're having this show. Is anybody going to show up? And then, people always show up, and then I start to relax when the place fills up. And then there, I don't, other than that, I've done it enough times where I don't have to prepare. I don't have that anxiety. I don't have to deep breathe. I don't have to do any of those things. I just can walk out and, you know, do my thing.
Very nice. Very nice. Now, what made you want to get into comedy?
It's interesting. I found NAMI, National Alliance of Mental Illness, largest grassroots mental health organization in the country, and they had local affiliates. And I was going to a local affiliate and getting support, and they brought in a comedian to teach a stand-up comedy class. And I thought, I don't know why I thought, but I thought, I can do that. So I took the class, and in the class, I, found out, the more anxiety, the more stress, the more challenges one has had in their life, the more material there is for comedy. And I had lots of material for comedy. I found out that I could write jokes. I was writing my jokes. I was writing jokes for other people in the class. And so that was really, I just kind of fell into it. And then other people in the class wanted to keep going, keep the class going. So I started teaching it. I started leading it and then teaching it. And it was just, I think, who knows? I mean, who would have thought? It had never crossed my mind before. And here this happened, and it was kind of serendipity. I just did it. And I mean, it changed my life. It truly changed my life. And I see that same transformation happening with the other people that I teach in the classes.
That's awesome. And what made you want to write this book? Like, what's the kind of inspiration behind the book? How did you set it up? How did you do something different? Because there's so many books on mental health out there. Everybody has a book. But what's different about this book?
What's different about my first book, OMG, That's Me, is I blog for bphope.com, and the posts have been read by over 1 million people, and the most common response is, OMG, that's me. You're telling my story. I don't feel so alone now. So I took those blog posts, the ones I liked the most, and the ones that had read the most, and I compiled them in the book. And the purpose was just, so many people read, blog posts, but, not, and, just a few people, but to get those and make it into a book and get it out there was really my motivation to get more people to really read and understand and feel seen and heard, and let them know that, hey, you're not alone. And then the second book, OMG, That's Me 3, which is about the stand-up comedy and the transformation that happened to people. The motivation there was to, really share the message that we're okay. People who live with mental health challenge are okay. We can be funny, and really to tell the stories of these inspiring people. These the people that whose lives have really been changed. And again, the change happened by just looking for the humor in our hardest times, our darkest times, and then finding some humor there. And it changed. I know you've talked about neuroplasticity and changing the pathways in the brain. And that's what this does. Instead of going to that dark place, people look for the humor, and then it changes the pathway. And then next time they get that trigger, they're going to the humor and the comedy, and they don't go to the anxiety. And Molly is an example. Molly was a doctor, and she had to give up medicine due to her mental illness. And she saw herself as, that's all she wanted to do is be a doctor. And she saw herself as a failure, and she lost everything. And her mom brought her to the class to get her started. And she said, "Hey, Molly's suicidal. I'm afraid I'm going to lose her, at any time." And Molly got into the class, and we started looking for humor in her story. And she's, we started writing jokes about it. And Molly now sees herself as a comic, not as a failed doctor. And she performs around town. She'll do open mics. She'll do some shows. And one of her favorite jokes is, little did I know going through med school, the MD would actually stand for manic depression.
Oh, wow.
So it's simple. But yeah, that just changes that from being, from that great and loss and challenges
Yeah.
into the humor.
Wow. What's your favorite joke to tell? What's the most impactful one?
If you're ready, I've got my favorite joke, the favorite joke for my shows. It's a bit edgy, but not really. And the favorite joke for families of folks with a mental illness or people with mental illness or just about everybody is a gentle suicide joke. So, suicide's never funny except when it is. So I'll tell you, and like I said, it's a gentle joke. So when things were really bad and I was really down in my dark days, I decided to end it all. So I went up into the bathroom and I took a bunch of pills. Afterwards, I called my wife for help. She said there are more pills under the sink.
Oh, that's dark.
I know it's dark, and usually there's a slight pause, and then people just laugh and laugh and laugh because, hey, it's something you can't talk about, it's something you can't joke about. But hey, no matter how dark it is, and no matter how hard it is, you can find something, and you don't have to go to that. You don't have to follow through. I call my experience through my 14 last years in the homelessness with my family was I I went through the stages of grief, but it was hard, and accepting that I had a mental illness was hard. I'd see other people and I'd say, "Hey, that's not me." Or when I was in the psych unit at the hospital, I'd look around and say, "That's not me." And finally, at a certain point, I said, "Yeah, that is me." I accepted the fact that I had a mental illness, but it was, I could say, acceptance without resignation. I accepted the fact that I had mental health challenges, but I didn't resign myself to how it is now as how it's always going to be. So I kept trying. I tried and failed, and I mean I tr- and panic attacks and all these things, but I kept trying, and it was extremely, extremely challenging and hard. uh, but I didn't get stuck, and I came out the other side. And for people who, may be listening, whether they be, just somewhere in the field or someone with a mental health challenge, you do come out the other side. And suicide or other things, they're a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Um, and don't get stuck. Don't get stuck.
That's great advice. That's absolute great advice. How did you get diagnosed? Like, how did you realize, hey, there's finally something to explain the way I'm experiencing life?
it, I was seeing a psychiatrist, and mostly I was seeing her for the depression. And I'd have my cycles. And when I was younger, in my 20s, I'd say, think, okay, I've got 3 year cycles, 3 great years, and 3 years that aren't so great, and it would go on. And as I got older, the lows got lower, and the highs got higher, and I knew there was something going on. But when I saw the psychiatrist, if I was depressed, it was obvious she could see it. But when I was manic or hypomanic, it was like I'm okay, talkative, and everything's fine. So it took a long time to get diagnosed with the bipolar disorder. And now, I mean, I still live with it, but I'm treated for it, and now the lows aren't so low and the highs aren't so high, and they don't last as long. Uh, so it's really made a difference. So it took years and years and years to finally get the correct diagnosis and to finally really know what was going on. And but the depression was awful. Unless somebody's really been in that dark, dark, dark place, it's really hard to understand it. And the mania, the hypomania was great, but then it always went into the mania and the risk taking, and just all the things involved with that. But the anxiety was constant. It was always there, and it, I think, was the worst part, because it was constant, and it was awful. And um, I it was just awful. That's all I can say about it. But finally, that's lifted, and I wrote some anxiety jokes, and that changed some of the pathways of my brain. And so when I think of my anxiety or get anxious, I can look for the humor in it. If I'm going to give a speech and I'm anxious, and sweating and whatever, I can say, okay, where can I find the humor in that? And then I go out and give the speech, and the anxiety is lessened enough for me to actually get up there and speak without shaking and without having an anxiety attack. And the anxiety, when it would happen, I'd start to sweat, I'd get stressed, my eyes, my vision would get blurry, my voice would go monotone, the muscles in my face would go slack, and the sweat would pour off me and soak my collar and my arm. It was just awful. It was everything I could do just not to run away, just not to escape, just not to, it took everything I could just to stay there and not to run away.
Yeah,
And, that's anxiety, the anxiety and the panic attacks, um, it's just awful. But, things are better now, and, it does get better.
yeah. Well, it always does get better. It's so unique that you found humor to make things better, because I know a lot of our listeners and a lot of my clients, they get stuck in the nothing's changing. I don't know what to do. I take this big pharma medication, and I don't feel better. And, I go to the gym here and there and I still don't feel better, and I don't eat right and I still don't feel better. But to find something, you know, that is not a drug, that is, something you can do. I mean, you could do comedy anywhere. You don't have to be on a big stage. If you're, starting to feel anxious, you can do it anywhere, in the car, Target, in the house. It's not something that you have to be somewhere for. So it's so nice that you've been able to create something and find something that works for you and also other people. And now you're teaching this, correct? You're teaching
Yes,
comedy with other people with mental health issues.
yes. It's undervalued. I think it's not. There's studies about humor and laughter and how it can help, and I mean, changes things and we feel better, but I think the what I'm doing is it's undervalued, and it's not. It's I'm just a guy, and I teach the comedy classes and do that, and people in my circle and in the larger community know what's happening, but not on a larger scale. So it's it really does make a difference. If there was some way that I could take it and communicate it and make it, you know, really understood and well known, um, that would be great because it can help more people. People with military experience and PTSD. This is the perfect. It's not a remedy, but it's something that can take them out of that PTSD, like with me and the hearing the song or seeing a sign or whatever it would, or the phone ring, anything that would trigger the PTSD and send me into that dark place. Um, it doesn't happen anymore. And it was simply it just look for the humor in that. And once you look for the humor and you start writing and writing jokes is an art, but you start writing jokes and finding the humor, then that's where you go and you start editing the joke, or you work on a different punchline, or whatever it is, and it takes you out of that space, out of that mindset. Yeah, I wish it was more prevalent. You know but I don't know how to make it happen. I'm a terrible promoter. I really am a terrible promoter. I can't make it about me. It can't be about me. When I do things, the things that work, the things that have worked for me, um, with the books and other things, it can't be about me. If I'm doing something just for me, I'm doing it for the wrong reasons. It's got to be for a higher, different purpose, to help people, to support people, whatever it might be.
So, how can our listeners find you? I'm going to help spread the love here. How can
Yeah,
they find your book? How can they find you? How can they get involved in what you're doing? Where are you in the World Wide Web?
yeah. The best way to get to me is message me on Facebook. I read all my messages. I reply to all of them. You know, whoever it is, whatever situation it is, I reply. The same thing on LinkedIn. Those are the best places. If someone lives with a mental illness and feels alone, um, and feels a little less hope, the first book, OMG, That's Me, tells a story of experiences living with a mental illness, and that's really resonated with people with a mental health challenge, with families, with others. So that's what you find in OMG That's Me, and OMG That's Me 3. Both of them are available on Amazon, and OMG That's Me 3 is inspirational and tells a story of the comics, the people that went from those dark places and those challenges to finding humor in their experiences, the transformation that happened with them. So Facebook, LinkedIn, both books are on Amazon. The audiobooks are actually outselling the paperbacks now, and the audiobook for OMG That's Me 3, we were able to splice in the comics, their actual acts on stage, telling their jokes in front of an audience and hearing the audience laugh. It's been described as, if I can say so, as brilliant the way it's put together. So, that's that's it. Those are the ways. Um, Read the books and share them, and then find me on LinkedIn or Facebook if you want more information, you just want to talk, you say, hey, I got this experience, where's the humor there? I'm happy to help.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you for coming on our show today. And I am going to put all of those links up on social media with the show notes so they can find your book, they can find your Facebook, they can find you, and we'll hashtag you in everything so that it circulates around. Um, Guys, you got to check the book out. OMG, that's me. And thank you for having Dave Mowry on the show.
Thank you for listening to Unpause Your Life with Dr. Cali Estes and Master Coach Jenny Fontana. Head over to www.thelifecoachmethod.com to learn more about coaching yourself and how to become a master coach.